This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story? Join us as we chat to the creatives behind the wicked movies. In terms of you guys have worked together over many years.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask, my podcast is usually about how people's careers begin. And in terms of the stepping stones, what was it that drew you to casting and wanting to get involved? Was it the first thing that you wanted to do in the film industry? And if you'd like to go first, but no.
Sure. The short version is when I got out of school at NYU, one of my producing teachers turned me on to, needed a job, and and they turned me on to two casting directors who were doing a lot of Broadway shows at the time, and I started working for them for about 6 years and just loved it. Started developing my taste, and I just connected so much to what actors do, and I was blown away by what they did. Yes, I studied acting in college, but I knew quickly I'm not going to do that. So to be in this position where you can try to help actors, open windows for people or guide them towards, a particular job, it's just thrilling. And every day it's different. And, and then I opened up my own office, and then Tiffany joined, and, we started doing more Broadway shows and movies and television. It's great. It's really fun.
Yeah, I can tell that everyone on this film seems really passionate, which seems ridiculous because you got to this point, you must be, but particularly on this film, everyone's like, I love my job, which is a great thing to see. Tiffany, for you, what was it, the first
Similar to Bernie, I'd started in acting school because I loved the art form, but I quickly realized, this is the right art form, but had a wonderful teacher point me towards directing. So I graduated with my BFA in directing, moved to New York and thought, I don't know anyone, how do you get started? And answered an ad because casting seemed close to, the closest for the sort of internships of what I wanted to do. Didn't know it was a career. Personally, I didn't know that. And so we started working, and I just loved working with actors. I feel like that is the main reason you get into casting, is working with actors. And so that I felt very comfortable because I just graduated, from working with actors as a director. And so that was fantastic. We do commercials and plays, and I love looking at the actors through the different filters of the different mediums we worked in, because we're really lucky where we get to work in. I did video games, we did plays, musicals, and it just made me realize this is what I love to do.
Well, you guys, not to go off topic from Wicked, but you guys do a show which has probably the biggest names in it, that Only Murders in the Building. There's always someone else you go, oh my God, how, everyone is in this show that's won an Oscar, or, Meryl Streep, or it's crazy. It must be so much fun when you get a project like Wicked where you go, right, okay, let's have a look at the book and see who we can get involved in these projects.
And people want to work with Steve and Marty and
Selena. So it's so fun. That one's a real... The brainstorming feels completely unleashed. We can really brainstorm, who on the planet.
And it's nice to have a project where you're always saying that, and you can get those people, because they do want to do that.
Who do we want and who are we going to get?
It's a little problematic for the other television shows we work on, because then everyone expects, you had them on Only Murders. It's like, well, it wasn't really us, that got them to do it, or, It's very funny.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
In terms of advice, do you have advice for anyone going in wanting to get involved in casting and start their own career in the film industry?
Sure, I would say, for casting, if there's a world where you can start working for a casting director, obviously starting out as an assistant, but even if there's not the job, start remembering the things that you're watching, whether it's television, film, theater, and take the notes and start developing your taste. So when you do have the opportunity to meet a casting director, and maybe you could work in their office somehow, you already have a sense of what the job is and the taste, because it really is a taste business.
Well, it's art. And art is subjective, right? Art isn't easy, to quote Mr. Sondheim. But I think that is the most important thing, is to become a sponge and fall in love with the art form and fall in love with different styles of acting, different styles of genre, so that you can have your own artistic point of view. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what they want from us, is we are going to collaborate and we have to have a specific point of view.
Yeah, 100%. The process as well, movies, theatre, but you guys have done everything. were there movies growing up that kind of influenced you and you were like, oh, that's really cool. I kind of want to know how that works. And
Yeah, I remember. It's a good question. I remember being in, I'm aging myself, but in high school and seeing Deer Hunter and wanting to know who all those actors are. You know, I mean, whether it was John Savage or Meryl Streep, you know, all of these. Sure, I knew who De Niro was, you know, already because I had maybe seen Taxi Driver, but there were just, you know, Chris Walken. There were so many, like they still stay with me, those images of like, who are those people? And you know, that was a time when you didn't have the internet. So you couldn't go home and look it up. You know what I mean? If you didn't see it on the cast crew on the list at the end of the movie, you were screwed, you know, and so I just remember trying to hold on to those kind of feelings when I would see a movie.
That's an incredible film.
Yeah,
it's such
really
it's
good
iconic.
movie. Yeah.
But it's funny that came out once and that was a new movie. You know, it feels so sort of embedded, doesn't it? It's like Jaws or these films.
Yeah.
Do you have any movies that kind
Definitely. I read The World According to Garp until the paperback fell apart in my hands so much in high school. And
Great
seeing
one.
the film, because you're imagining these characters, right? You're imagining them. And then when you see the film, like putting that together, how... Because you know everyone's chosen, right? I was acting in plays in high school. I understood auditioning and getting parts.
Yeah.
And then also I'd have to say The Big Chill.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
But see, like that not to, you know, those were two movies for me, and I had already started like working as an assistant, and I remember going, oh, look who's playing in Garp, Glenn Close. I just saw her in Barnum, you know, which was a musical on Broadway that wasn't a big deal. But it was right at that time when those New York actors were all crossing over and getting the movies, like Big Chill, you know, Bill Hurt, who was he? Oh, I saw him in Children, you know, I saw him in a play at Circle Rep. So those, you know, just great memories.
Yeah, I guess that's what it's all about as well, like seeing or spotting a performance, whether it be on stage or in a film or whatever it is, and going, who's that? I feel like maybe they could, and that's so
and we
much
do that
fun.
today.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? There's, you know, I mean, like Cynthia started in stage, you know, Color
Everybody
Purple
in
over
Wicked.
here. Yeah.
People always ask me.
Our
I
singing
find
voices.
I was in 13. I saw that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just Johnny, same
Johnny.
thing. Saw him in
no,
Company,
everybody,
London.
our whole cast.
Like
Bach,
you're
obviously,
constantly
Marissa.
doing that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, whether they're going to get the job right at that moment or it's going to be 3 or 4 years later, like Ethan Slater, we knew we put him in shows, we've seen him in shows. We just didn't have a movie that he was right for or that he got. And then, you know, then there was this one.
This is a question that all actors, a lot of people listen to my podcast or watch my podcast, they're actors and they want to know what the key is. And I know there isn't a key, but I'm an actor myself, so really this question's for me. But in terms of getting in the room and being auditioned by you guys, how can you get your foot in the door as an actor to be seen?
I mean, I think you have to do everything. You have to say yes. You have to just immerse yourself in the industry, because then if you get that off Broadway or off West End play, and I read a review, right? Like I read reviews if I'm not in the town where it is, because I want to be hearing what's going on. That could be the little thing, right? Like I think of Amir Arison, who did that little play, and then suddenly we were like, everyone wanted him, or Peter Merrick had that too, right? Where he was, you read a review and you were like, who is this? So now you start to seek that out. One, if you can get tickets to the play, or if you can even watch B-roll. So just saying yes, being part of something. And now it's such a good time for actors. I know it's never been easy for actors. Let's just be honest. It's never been easy. It's never been an easier time or a better time. But right now, because of the internet and because of things like TikTok, if you're a comedian, a dancer, you know, a singer, you have so many more platforms to be seen, right,
100%.
than you ever had. I mean, when we were casting Wicked, dancers were coming up, and if I saw pineapple written on the wall behind them, I knew, let's get them in. And that's just TikTok.
And the other thing is knowing, you know, just to add to that, and that was great, Tiffany, was it is a business. And if you're an actor just starting out and you don't have representation, but how do I get seen? It's like, you know, write a letter. You know, write a business letter, you know, and I don't mean business, but a personal letter that lets us know who you are, you know, and it's not like, hi, I want to star in Wicked. You know, that's not the letter, but we get those too. It's, you know, I know you don't know me, but I'm blah, blah, blah. If you're ever looking for an understudy for this project, or you're looking for someone to do some of the small roles, I'd love to be seen, encloses a link of something that I did. You know what I mean? It's it's help me remember you. I always say to another actor.
It gives
you know
us
what I mean?
context for where you're coming from. I think also we have to even start before that, because acting, when people are good at it, it looks like behaving. I don't think anyone goes to the Philharmonic and says, tomorrow I'm going to move to Berlin and I'm going to be a cellist. Right? You see what acting, you do go, I'm going to move to LA or I'm going to move to New York just because you want to be a part of that. So it is a craft, right? It's an art form. And so I really think, forget about fame. Let fame be an embarrassing byproduct of good work. Pursue the work. Get into a class that kicks your butt. Figure out your point of view. At the end of the day, every artist has to have a point of view.
Love that.
Does that do what I think it does? No! No way! I'm obsessulated.
You guys cast this movie. That is a huge job, and it's right at the kind of beginning of the process. How do you go about finding these characters, these key players? Because this is a show that people love. It's been on years.
Yeah.
What is the first step of finding these amazing actors for these parts?
One of the exciting things at the beginning working with Mark Platt, because we also cast the Broadway show for the last 20-something years.
Right.
So we know who these two women are. Let's start with those witches, right? And John and Mark were so open about, let's see the world. Let's see stars, non-stars, women just coming out of school. So, how we started was just brainstorming. Of course, we're making our lists of the women we know that sing, because we work on a lot of musicals. And you're just trying to get them in, which is, part of the problem, trying to find the time that they're all available to come in and audition, and then see all the new people. I mean, it was just so exciting.
It was fun to be able to explore. You often can't do that in a feature film, right? You need to get certain elements in place to get a green light, right? And you don't have time. And this time we really were given the chance to explore.
But also, these two films were shot back to back, so it's a long process as well. So to tie down an actor, especially if they're a big name,
right?
You've got to kind of convince them of this. But the first one came out, it's a huge success. Now everyone knows it's great, but trying to tie actors down that are big names, is that a tricky one? Like fitting out the schedule and coming over to England and.
Oh yeah, that's the hardest thing. There's the creative part of like finding the people that you want, but like on any movie, and especially this one, it was. Okay, are they going to be available to shoot? I remember Michelle, had just won the Academy Award. She was already committed to so many projects. And same with Johnny. It was really a scheduling feat to try to get people to commit to it.
And this sounds like a strange thing to say, but the performances in this film are incredible. I know. It sounds like a stupid thing to say, but they really are. Like when I was watching it, I was thinking, there's no reason for it to be, like, you could panto it up, you could be a bit hammy with these parts, but they're all incredible. They're like Oscar-worthy performances in this. I know there's a temptation to maybe, if you're playing Captain Hook, ham it up, or was it always to reach for that, to have that it feels so real, that all the performances
I think we were really looking for actors who had the essence of the character and felt Aussian, so that it would be grounded in a reality. We were really creating a world that you could believe in, because it has so many, as a piece, has so many important things to say about, our society and our world that we live in, but you have to also believe in Oz. And so I think that finding actors with the essence of who the character is that lives within them.
And John always said, even though they have to sing amazing, and there is all these larger than life kind of moments, like you mentioned, he wanted that vulnerability. He wanted that honesty, and what is so beautiful about Cynthia and Ariana is how they listen to each other. I'm always amazed watching the first one again, and I've seen the second one, of course, of how they just are present. And the listening allows you as an audience member to just dive into the movie with them. So then when it's the large stuff, you're just with it emotionally.
100%. And their performances together as well. The way they are listening, as you say, but they really sort of connect and bounce off it, and you believe that relationship, and that's something that if you didn't believe that, the whole thing would kind of fall apart, but they're just...
That's what it's really about, right? It's their connection. And I think during the audition process, they both specifically really showed us that they understood the legacy of Wicked and understood the relationship was the most important thing. And I think that made it really key for us to go, this is the right pair.
You know, you spend so much time watching the movie. I'm thinking, because I just saw it again, of like, you can't wait till they're together. You know what I mean? Obviously, they have a journey separately in the movie, but you just, as an audience member, and that's the greatest thing about movies, right? When you feel that, you know, and they just make you do that.
And I'd never seen, I'm going to admit this, I'd never seen the stage musical. So watching this, everything was a surprise. I was
Oh my
like,
God.
oh my God.
You're like, oh my God, oh, that's the best.
Especially in the sequel where there's moments where obviously the Wizard of Oz crosses over as well, and there's loads of really lovely little moments where you're like, I did not see that. Oh wow. Like,
Right,
you know,
that's what happened?
Yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Absolute brilliant work from everyone. It feels like such a, you know, team effort as well. You watch it, and I said this to the guys I was speaking to earlier about the visual effects and the editing, that everything just comes together beautifully. And I guess that's you know, the
That's
whole
John
team
Chu.
effort.
And Mark Platt, I have to say.
They both just said always, this is a collaboration of all departments. And I don't think we've worked on a movie together where I know the whole team. And I'm not talking about the actors, of course, but all the other creative parts. And that was Mark and John. They just were like, we're all doing this together. And that's what shows.
It's the Wicked Witch!
You two are two different ends of the spectrum when it comes to making this movie. Obviously, you shot this and you build the sets and make it look fantastic. These two things do come together, though.
We started prepping this movie a very long time before we started shooting. John Chu and I started talking for 2 years. And when Nathan came on board, we just started early. As the second he joined, the three of us were on Zoom together and just talking about ideas and emotions and themes. And so that John's this really emotional storyteller. And so every choice he makes is based off of emotion. I mean, I feel like the two of us the entire time were always talking every single day. I mean, I remember at one point I was up in Nathan's art department, and he's like, I've never had a DP, a cinematographer in my art department as much as you are, Alice. There was not a day that went by that we didn't
I mean, it doesn't work
collaborate.
unless you work together. It doesn't work because, sure, we design and build all the sets, but they have to be lit and photographed. So the two things go hand in hand. They are not separate jobs, and we have to communicate constantly to get that working. And there's so many technical instances on this film and tricky photography. Girl in the Bubble, like, you know, you look at those scenes and you look at how you mirror sets. Like, it doesn't work unless we're on the same page. It just won't work.
I mean, Girl in the Bubble, it was the second number that we shot. We shot the movies simultaneously. So the first number we shot was Popular, and the second number we shot was Girl in the Bubble. So you can only imagine how different those two numbers are, right? And I say that the first movie glows in effervescent daylight, and the second film, it lives in a maturity and density of shadow. And Nathan built this 60-story or 45-foot two-story set for Girl in the Bubble as Glinda's suite, and we have this. Girl in the Bubble all acts as one shot. It's 7 shots stitched together as one, but we had to work together to figure this out because I needed practicals in the set to be able to light her because she's moving through space. So we dim on and off Nathan's beautiful practicals throughout. And mirror size, I mean, maybe you could talk about mirror size. That was a specific choice too.
I mean, when you're pushing, I mean, because the scene is marvelous because she's watching her reflection and she's not happy with who she's become and she has to change to save Oz. But you push through a mirror. Alice had to push her camera through to her reflection and look at, when you're in a crisis and you don't know which way to go, you're always, you're looking in this mirror. She's got to push the camera through, which means if we had all the money and all the time in the world, I would have taken the set plan here and I would have just mirrored it that way and then mirrored it this way. But obviously we can't do that. We don't have a soundstage. We don't have the funds to do that. So when you push through this side of the set, she's got to come through the wall with the camera, and then we have to bounce over here so the reflection works and continuous, that shot. So you do that 7 times, and that is very tricky. And hopefully it goes a little unnoticed when you see the sequence. You've seen the film.
Yeah.
And you only really you only catch it when you're in the Hall of Memories, right? You catch it a little bit because of the space. But it's kind of interesting.
But we did. The scene starts where Glinda walks from the closed balcony doors into the space, and we start to arc around her. And at first, you see this wall where the mirror is, and then we start to arc around her. And as we arc around her, the special effects team moves the wall out of place. And so Nathan had to design a set that so that the wall could fly in camera. So then we're pulling back because it's all math. Mirrors are all math. So I need to pull back a specific distance so that it feels like a real reflection. And so this wall flies, and then as we come out of the mirror again, we're pulling back and the wall comes back in. So this is all happening live while she's singing live. So it had to be done quietly too. And then Nathan had to do things like pull other walls because it's 5 Steadicam shots and 2 crane shots all stitched together. And the 5 Steadicam shots are easier, but the crane shot, we needed a 45-foot techno crane in his beautiful space.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. The reason you're looking at a set that has symmetry is because we have the mirror, and because there's 2 staircases, 2 mirrors, 2 walls, equality in the set, and it's done very specifically. So that design is a mirror of itself, and I think you have to build all of this in, and that comes from conversations. I remember when you came in that morning with your kids' toys saying, I think I figured out how to move through mirrors.
John had this idea, and we looked at all these shots, like greatest movie shots of all, mirror shots of all time, and YouTubers making mirror shots. And one night in the middle of the night, I woke up at 2 a.m, and I thought we were about to have this meeting at 8 a.m. where all the departments were coming together to discuss this. And I'm like, how do we describe going in and out of mirrors? So I grabbed my husband's shaving mirror, 2 princess bath dolls, bath toys of my daughters, and 2 bananas, and the bananas represented Nathan's staircase. And I shot it on my iPhone, and I brought the props in the next morning, and we all were able to talk about the set that way.
That's great, because I know exactly the shot you're talking about as well.
Yeah.
And it did go unnoticed, but now you've explained it. I'm like, oh, I was trying to figure it out afterwards. Like, how did they do that?
But it's also such an emotional moment, so you have to and she has to change. She has to give up all this privilege, and you're doing it through reflection. And I love that shot.
So that was all practical.
It was all practical.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, visual effects stitched the shots together.
Of course.
Not to take away from visual effects at all. They had a ton of work to do too, but it's a real set.
Yeah, that's insane.
And everything all 7 shots we captured in camera, not a blue screen set at all. But it is about as Nathan just said, it is this moment that is so key. It is Glinda's darkest moment in the movie. It is the moment she looks at herself and decides that's not the person I want to be anymore, that it's time to pop her bubble, that it's time to finally know what it means to truly be good.
Yeah, she becomes the Good Witch of the North. You know, this is her moment.
It's a very powerful moment.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that scene up, because that is insane how you've done that. In terms of, with your career going from In the Heights to something like this, the scale and the size of it, is there a difference? I mean, you just explained that. That sounds like there is a big difference when you're doing something as technical as this.
I've known John Chu for 25 years. We started shooting his student short film at USC. That's how we became friends. It was a musical, and we were kids who wanted to grow up and make musicals together, and it was at a time no one made musicals. It was pre-Moulin Rouge, pre-Chicago, and I remember sitting on Nathan's beautiful Emerald City set, which is the size of 4 American football fields. And John and I are lying, watching playback on the iPad. He says, this is just like we're in film school. And I'm like, except we're laying here in the middle of Emerald City. And the heart of, the way John and I work together, and the team he builds, and the team he built on Wicked, I mean, I think we all want to stay together forever. he builds this team where we are kids playing. And it's no different shooting a student film, shooting a movie like In the Heights where we didn't have sets, where we shot on the streets of New York, to shooting in a completely, hugely built world of Wicked. It's been pretty miraculous.
It must be wild to look back and think, here we are now with this film, and I mean the end product's incredible. And Nathan, we talked about last time, we talked about your beginnings with, Hook, on set there, and kind of going from the start of your career to now. You've done so many huge films.
Yeah.
But does this feels pretty vast? I mean, as it's shot over 3 years as well, it's a big old project. Does it, even for you, does it feel like a huge sort of...
No, it's by far the biggest film I've ever made. And for me, that's actually saying quite a lot because we've tackled a lot of tricky stuff practically. And I mean, there's plenty of visual effects, and I don't want to play that down at all because it's everyone. But yeah, big films. I mean, I started on Hook, but really my film school was, I went straight onto Bram Stoker's Dracula. Yeah. And I worked art director for second unit, which was all the tricks, all the mirror tricks, all the upside down reflections of the rats, the Dracula moving on skateboard. We had hydraulics and we did all the cutouts. And it's all Pepper's ghosts, the shadow work. So that was really my love of practical filmmaking started there. And I think I was like 25. And I feel very sort of lucky that I just got to continue working with people who like doing things practically. And it kind of took all of that to make this. Not that you never bring the same tools to the next film, but you do need the confidence to know you'll figure it out. And that comes from experience. And so it was good. It was the perfect film. It opened a whole new door for me to meet these guys and go into musical fantasy. It was just brilliant. I'd do it all again tomorrow. So I think we'd all do it.
We'd all do it again.
Maybe
it's the best time
of our lives. But I don't want to spoil anything, but the end kind of... but there's so many films that are on this scale that are done with, green screen or blue screen or whatever the current is. It's amazing that they've done so much practical work on this movie, it being what it is. That must be so fun for you when you've got these actual solid sets, it's all on screen. It's
all on screen, and we spent so long making every single little teeny choice, and then being able to step on, right? Like everything is at this micro level when you're prepping. Whether it's the practicals, every single practical that Nathan and his team has picked out, to the color of the walls, like every single micro choice that was made and tested, and then the reality starts to sink in as you start stepping into these sets, and it was a leap of faith by the studio, right, to make two movies. We made them simultaneously. We shot. Some mornings we would be shooting in the Wizard's throne room for movie 1, and in the afternoon we'd switch and shoot Wonderful for movie 2 in the afternoon, all on the same set. But Nathan's sets were so vast that I was able to, and both movies are lit very differently. We had two different approaches for each movie, and we had to track that throughout. And so we had lighting setups for movie 2 that we dim off and certain units, and luckily the sets were big enough that we could have both kinds of lights set already pre-rigged, and then we'd dim them on. We'd switch the lighting setup in the afternoon, and tracking all of that, and the studio taking this huge leap of faith to be able to do both movies simultaneously at the same time without knowing what the box office of the first movie would be.
Did all right, so fine. That's insane. I didn't realize it was actually simultaneously. I thought maybe you shoot the first one, then you shoot the next one back to back, but it was all mixed in.
We only had Jeff Goldblum for 4 weeks total.
Yeah. Oh my god!
So for both movies total.
Wow. Yeah. That's insane. Wow, that must be a real head for the actors when they're trying to figure out where they are, what they're doing,
but at least we can give them real places to sort of so they can dive into these places and be their characters. And I think the balance of digital work and practical work needs to be equal. And it also for you, the audience, it makes you feel like there's a handmade feeling to it, and that sort of relates to the nostalgia of The Wizard of Oz and Wicked, because we have to be careful. We're treading on generations of people's love of Oz, so we have to give it a handmade feel. And so if you put enough practical in, you light that practical set, then you're kind of touching a little bit of that, because it is handmade. It's scenics and painters and sculptors, and I love that. And
there's like this old-time simplicity, old Hollywood simplicity to the way we made this movie. And you get the script for Wicked, and you there's endless possibilities and endless choices, and the reality is it's a film about, it's a love story between Elphaba and Glinda, between two best friends, and so we did everything did want to feel handmade and leaving a handprint on your heart the way the For Good says. And so, yes, we can go huge and epic and vast, but then we're very intimate and close, and being able to be in real sets versus a blue screen world where you feel them in their environment, and we can move the camera 360 degrees because there's real sets everywhere, and we can get as close as we want to and then pull back wide and see the vastness of Oz. And so there's this careful balance of close and wide and epic and vast and intimate, and it does feel like a handmade movie.
100%, and the continuity, as you say, it's lit differently, but it still feels like it's been made by the same people with the same, love behind it. Everyone that I've talked to today have been so passionate and happy that they've worked on this film, which sounds like it should be a given, but it's quite a rare thing, and it's really nice to see that everyone's sort of...
I think it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Because it takes all of us. We can't do it alone. We just can't do it alone. So you need everyone on side. And also, For Good is epic. It's like the stories of the Witches of Oz. It's the origin stories of all these characters. It's just... I'm excited. I'm excited to see it again. I want to see it again. So.
And there's this visual heartbeat that intricately weaves camera and lighting and production design and costume design and makeup. It intricately weaves it into one. And so one whole movie, even though each film is its own distinct movie, when you step back and look at it as a whole, every intention and choice is clear and vibrant and beautiful.
No, it certainly is. It's an incredible film. And you guys are in two very different fields. What would your advice be for someone that wants to become a cinematographer, for instance?
Actually, you talk first.
Do you want to go? Someone that wants to be in sets.
I was getting ready to listen to something fascinating.
Yeah, you're like...
Yeah, come on. I want to become a cinematographer. No, I'm joking. How do you become a designer? Well, you need optimism, and you need positivity. You need a bit of talent and a lot of luck. And you have to if you're very young, you just have to go in, even though you don't know what you're doing, and you have to engage and push into the art department and just take on tasks that you're perhaps not comfortable with, because your career is all about doing things you're not comfortable with and finding solutions. So you might as well start off at the beginning with getting uncomfortable. So,
fair play.
Yeah.
It's now your turn.
It is now my turn. I knew I wanted to be a cinematographer when I was 15 years old. I fell in love with light when I was a little girl. And what I didn't realize when I was 15 and decided this was going to be my path is how heartbreaking it can be. And that the lows can be so low and you feel like you'll never come up from them. And when you're on your greatest highs, it feels like you'll never come down from them. But actually, my career has lived somewhere in between those highs and lows. And to find amazing people to be on this journey with, like John Chu, who I've known for 25 years, or Myron Kerstein, who I've done 5 movies with now, and now Nathan, like people who build each other up, and that was what was so special about Wicked, is we all felt safe because we could be uncomfortable together.
There's a house, and it's flying through the sky. I'm off to see the wizard.
Visual effects and editing feels like it comes hand in hand, but do your paths ever kind of cross behind the scenes when you're making the film?
Oh yeah, I mean, 8 months of shooting in London, the rainy days of London, and it was. I was upstairs at Sky Studios, and oftentimes Pablo would be on the first floor, and I'd come down and see him, and it was like trench warfare, and where the fields were. Where Shiz was built in Emerald City. But yeah, and then we've spent, thousands of hours working with thousands of artists all over the world. So Pablo's basically been my lifeline for the last 3 years.
Well, thanks. Same thing here. I mean, I think the idea is that, especially visual effects, in terms of storytelling, we're supporting everybody. And so it's, especially editing, we work together to give, John and Myron as much as many options as possible, as much material as possible, so that when we are in post, we never get into a situation where we say, wouldn't it be nice if we had this or that, and we don't have it. So, so it's been great. I mean, I think one of the most rewarding things is developing relationships, with all the filmmakers, and kind of finishing each other's sentences.
Of course. So, you guys did both films back to back, right? So, what was the process from start to finish? What was the length of this whole thing?
3 years. Yeah,
wow,
3 years. It's when I first met Pablo, it was over a Zoom, of course, and Pablo had all these awesome guitars behind him. He plays a lot of music. He might send it to you at some point. But right away I knew I was working with an artist, and he was going to inspire me, and hopefully I will inspire him by through the edit. You have to try to click right away because there's no time. 3 years can go by like that, and it did, and so, and also the level of the world building and the CG characters, you don't have a lot of time to figure that out. Everyone's waiting. So even when I was first assembling the footage in London, as we were shooting, VFX was like, when are you going to have it ready? So, so you have to click, you have to inspire each other, you have to, for me, it was a big learning curve too. I didn't know anything about really big VFX shows. I was cutting more intimate work like Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights, and now I was being asked to build Oz with Pablo. So I was learning a lot from Pablo at the same time. And so
yeah, but at the same time, I think editing is where all this subtleness comes in. Because I kind of like the difference between a big musical when you're just sitting, far away from the action, and a cinematic experience when you're like this. And now you're starting to see the subtleness of the performances. And so we pick it up right after that, and we learn from the rhythm of the piece and what John and Myron are trying to do. And we mirror that, because otherwise it's a shot and then visual effects and then a shot. So the whole idea is that behind kind of an organic kind of take on visual effects, that is not really a creature show, it's another character show.
Of course. Well, I can see how you guys work together, because even here you're giving each other space to talk and share. It's very, you can see you're a team. In terms of visual effects, this film it's huge. Some of the other films that you've done in the past, like The Lost World or Independence Day, they're huge films. But how does this compare in terms of sort of the number of visual effects shots and the size of it?
The number of visual effects shots has grown. Like, for instance, if you go back to even the first Jurassic Park, you say, how many shots are there, do you think? The 47 shots.
Wow.
Yeah.
Spielberg, come on, let's go.
Well, obviously technology has changed, and also the way you think about it has changed in terms of telling a story. Independence Day, since you mentioned it, had 152 shots.
Wow.
So that's it. So and then the Star Wars films have hundreds, and then we just keep going up and up until we end up with Wicked, where every shot is a visual effect shot, and
2000.
Yeah, and this one is pretty much, for good, it's pretty much as much. Plus the complexity of some of those, sequences and shots. But I think what it is I don't think you change the way you think about the work. I think you trust the people that work with you. And, on those films, we had a crew of 100, maybe 100 people, 70 people. Now we have 1,000 people. So you have to be very good at communicating. And
All over the world, by the way,
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So you work 24 hours. So if you're working with London and Sydney, I think all of us, is the morning for London and the afternoon for Sydney. So you're working 24 hours. You're thinking about it 24 hours. But it's about trust, really. You trust the people that you work with, and you delegate.
It's so interesting because I didn't really understand how you did it, because it was so complicated, and we would have one review in the morning for London, and then in the afternoon we'd have a second review, and I'm like, when is Pablo sleeping? And how is he able to talk to all these artists and all these these coordinators, and just to so just the infrastructure was so complex. Not to then you have the creative side,
Sure.
and
But it's like your team too. I mean, you do have also a team of people, and you trust that the people that you work with are filmmakers, and they also support you in a way that, like for instance, sometimes we'd be on a review, and especially towards the end, it's very difficult to see the work right before we present it. So you trust that your notes have come through, and then you're seeing it. But it is about communication and trust.
Yeah, it must be. It's a real balancing act. And when you watch this film, it feels like everyone is at the top of their game. Everything about it just feels right. Yeah, it really is an incredible piece of work, and I'm amazed by how many people you say have worked on this film. That blows my mind. But in terms of the edit, when you're given, you go from In the Heights to something like this. They're both musicals, obviously, but very different in scale. Is that excitement? Is there a little bit of terror? What is the process that your mind goes through?
It's definitely both terror and excitement to go from In the Heights to a film like Wicked. I ended up approaching a good friend and great editor. His name is Wyatt Smith, and he's cut a lot of Rob Marshall films and a lot of high-end VFX movies. And I approached him and I said, "How do you cut these big, visual effects musicals? Because you've done it." And he's like, "Don't do anything differently. Cut from your heart. You're a storyteller first." And so I just left that and said, okay, I'm going to approach this the same way. It's like, what is actually going to move me? What's going to give me goosebumps? What's going to make me laugh? What's going to make me cry? And then I'm going to use that to start to build out these beautiful sequences. And then I can go to Pablo and it's like, how do I do a cyclone falling on Nessa? And it's like, well, have you seen how cyclones work? And, what do you imagine the cyclone looks like when it approaches Munchkin Land? I'm like, okay, and I see a shot that looks like this. And can we make a shot? And he's like, yeah, we could maybe make that shot. It might take 6 months. But so I was learning on the job, really, like how to build Oz, and at the same time don't change too much of how I approach footage, but learn how to work with teams, visual effects teams, and my visual effects editor Ed Marsh, who's worked with James Cameron. He could say, I could ask all the dumb questions of like, what is previs? What is post-vis? I didn't know any of that. Anyways, but then just remember at the end of the day, it's about the heart and cutting from the heart and letting the team support you and to get to the finish line. You have to rely on your team to help you get through this process. You can't just say, I'm doing it all by myself, and this is a massive undertaking. You have to do what you do. You're a storyteller. I'm trying to cut the best scene possible, and then get the support from there.
Yeah, it's kind of something else happens too. Is that the movie kind of develops. There are certain things that are developed in post with us, working with the stuff that was shot, and John's idea, and that is because that's one of the things I learned about. I hadn't worked on a musical before, and some things are not in the script. They're just the lyrics of the song, and so
nothing is delineated, and so necessarily beat by beat as far as the songs are concerned. So we have a lot of liberty.
Yeah. So like for instance in the tornado sequence, I mean, we sat down and we kind of like, wouldn't it be great to have this shot? And once you have that, then that opens up to maybe having a close-up here or having a medium shot there, and what kind of story you're trying to tell. And obviously the way you cut it, I mean, you could go one way or you could go this other little way, and that opens up something else. Especially when you're working with creature work. I mean, should this person be, or this character be ambiguous about something, And then you start working with words like ambiguity or guilt, or how do you put that on something?
Yeah, you have a main character like Chistry, you have to communicate so much for a monkey with wings who doesn't speak.
Right.
And so we're sitting there with animators and with Pablo and trying to explain, the expression and what have you. One of the things that I love about working with ILM and Framestore and the VFX department is like, just because this level of restraint. Because just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And so also, sometimes you're like, I can do anything. And they're like, yeah, but do you want to? Yeah. And so there was a pushback as well. It's hard to imagine that Oz feels like there's actually restraint there. But there is, we don't always go for the grand shot flying over Oz. Sometimes it's more about the intimate things. So it's that balance and like you said, the nuance.
Yeah, and it's also a difference because when you're casting an actor, you're casting that actor because you're seeing something in that actor that is going to be brought back into the movie. But when you're casting the CG character, visual effect is contrary to any other filmmaker. We're asking him to turn over work when they're not ready, when they're not thinking about this. Everybody is trying to work in continuity because it builds something, and you get invested into something. But visual effects comes in and say, well, we need 200 shots by this date, otherwise we're not going to be able to make it. So it is a constant transaction, but always for the betterment of the movie.
Now for a quick break. We'll be back to the episode shortly. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support us, get early access and exclusive content and episodes, click to join our YouTube channel and become a member now. Please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at lifeinfilmpod. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you. Life in Film has partnered with Betterhelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, Betterhelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. We are sponsored by movieposters.com. Are you a movie fan? I presume you are. Well, at movieposters.com, you can shop for all your favourite posters in one place. The #1 source for high quality, authentic movie posters. From new releases to cult classics and 100% authentic originals. Thinking of having a browse? Well, if you see a poster that tickles your fancy, as a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off with promo code lifeinfilm10. That's promo code lifeinfilm10. So why not give it a go? And back to the show. I believe you started in it was like fashion and design. How did you move into, costume and kind of going down that road? Where did it all begin for you?
I would say that it began when I was in high school, and my first fully realized costume design, for the whole production was The Wiz, a production of The Wiz that I did when I was a junior, and this is in the States in Akron, Ohio. And I was in a performing arts program, so I had the opportunity to devote the time and energy to that kind of creative expression. And I realized, I'd realized before that I knew how to, I knew how to draw and paint, and I knew how to sew. I learned to do that. And, and I was, I loved, clothing. I really wanted to be a performer. I didn't, it wasn't that I was, I did the costume design on the side because I loved the creating of theater pieces. So that was a secondary way of expressing. But then when I went towards my first year in college, and I was studying fashion, I realized that was an environment that really, it was stifling more than it was actually opening up my creativity. And so I then went into a program that was more focused on costume design. At that time, I was then trying to decide what I was going to do next with, as far as a career. And I made the decision to let go of performance and actually focus on costume design. And so I went to a secondary school, a graduate school at NYU. And then after that, and that was where I was, really encouraged to be a professional designer. And I learned to mature as a designer. And then once I graduated, I started designing, and that was my, the beginning of my freelance career. So it's been a journey, a very full journey of realizing myself as a costume designer. But there has been an element of that all the way since I was 14 years old, probably, into right now. And I never would have thought that I would have had the opportunity to design something like Wicked. It's it is really once for many people a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, I would love to do it again. And there's a second one coming out, but
I was gonna say you kind of have. It's coming.
Yeah. But it's and I look towards those opportunities where I can really it's that collective of doing everything that I love to do, whether it's, it does come down to, telling beautiful stories, but it's also by creating beautiful visuals that incorporate my love of fabric and fabrication and textures and all the different elements that lead up to creating character.
Yeah, man, I love it, and you're passionate, and it's always great to see like someone enjoying their job, man. So congratulations. We've got to wrap up now, but I'd like to ask one thing just quickly, because there's a lot. We have people that listen to this that are all walks of life in the film industry, actors or producers, costume design, people that want to get in. What would your advice be to someone trying to tread the same road as you and get started?
You speak of passion, and that is the one thing that has kind of held by my side and really and drawn me through, because there's been a lot of ups and downs in being a freelance designer, and you don't know how it's going to open up, you have to develop the confidence in yourself that you can do the work, and that's by really understanding from forwards and backwards this world, and being open to other ways of doing it as well, and staying flexible. I'm a very much a people person, and I really get excited about working with the directors in developing the visual of the world, and working with the actors as well and developing their characters specifically. And so having those conversations, I'm always interested in other points of view to be able to incorporate it into the way that I'm going to design, because I'm relying on other people to bring it to life. The same for collaborating with amazing costume makers, and really leaning into what they bring to the creation of costumes. So, I love the community, the environment of creating both film, television, and theater, and it just really works for me. So anybody coming into this world, I think that you really have to develop a love of sharing, and where you've got an artistic sensibility, you also need to be able to engage with other creatives in making this work. And I think that yes, it requires patience and hope and faith, and everything that you have no control of. But it comes down to knowing your craft and really understanding, getting a better sense of what you bring to your profession.
Popular.
Costume design on this film, that must be a lot of fun.
It was, I mean, I was in heaven, and it was a huge honor to work with John Chu and the amazing cast. But then to have the opportunity to re-envision what this world is, the world of Oz is, was just, it was just a delight.
How do you begin? I mean, it's such a huge task when when you get that phone call to say, oh, you've got this job. That must be pretty like, okay, where do you start? It's so where do you begin?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that Wicked, you were saying that you weren't familiar with the musical. It has a huge fan base, and I think that there are, a lot of people who really love the musical as well as the 1939 film. Because I grew up, watching the 1939 film almost every Easter. It would play. So, to step into those shoes, I mean, it's kind of a daunting task to then figure out what are those, iconic elements that, I might incorporate into this film to create a new, I guess a telling that would serve 2024, 25. So, it's it was a lot. It's also in the way that John Chu wanted to tell the story in a way that was all inclusive. That was, it was with Nathan Crowley and building these huge sets, and we had these actual environments that needed to be filled with people that where the audience could be drawn into this world and really want to be a part of this world, and in doing that, thinking about detail and qualities of texture that it really resonates in a way that would feel as real as possible, although albeit a fantasy world.
Well, this as well, seeing the trailers and watching that, and I was like, okay, this looks amazing. How much of this is going to be like CGI? And watching the film, I was blown away by, you can really tell, obviously the costumes, but the sets and everything else, it all looks real, looks tangible. It looks like there's not actually as much CGI as I expected, because you're creating it's a magical world, isn't it? Was this all material? Was this all like physical? Was there any sort of elements that were added afterwards with the
I
costume?
mean, except for what was on the animals, because the animals are CGI. Everything else was created, and that was a huge and fortunate opportunity for me as a designer. But it also speaks to my sensibility and how I like to design, which is to create as much as possible. We were casting buttons with this shiz emblem and the Galinda emblem, and all of the handwork that went into all these clothes, whether it was the spiraling origami ascot on the wizard that Jeff Goldblum wears, the undulating pleating on Elphaba's Emerald City dress. I mean, all of that, it took these amazing and talented artisans, the time and expertise to create these costumes and make them, they were realized in real life. And that is a rare occurrence. You don't get that opportunity as a designer, and I'm just so fortunate to have had that opportunity. It's I think that it all of it speaks to the just how to because I think that all of that detail has become the definition of what this Wicked is. And I think that it operates as a support for this very dear and emotional story about the relationship between these two women. And I find that just a wonderful just opportunity as a designer.
Well, if you look at the cast, the crew, everyone involved in this, they're all the elite, and you're one of those elite. It's pretty amazing, the ensemble that's been brought together for this. I couldn't quite believe it, actually, when I was looking through before watching the film. I was like, Jesus Christ, like, everyone here, everyone's won BAFTA's, been nominated for Oscars. It's crazy. But speaking of BAFTAs, you've obviously got a nomination for this. Congratulations. Incredible job. But this isn't, you've been nominated multiple times, I think 6 or 7 times already. So I hope this is your one.
Well, let's hope. Fingers crossed. I am always honored to be acknowledged for my work. As a creative, you can't go into it with any expectation of that kind of accolade. You go into it focusing on doing your best work. And I think that I was surrounded by and in great company for that, that as well, that intention as well. I think that, all of us throughout the process of designing Wicked were intent on making this be the most spectacular film that we could possibly make it. And, led, with the brilliance of John Chu, I think that we, that was our ultimate focus. And, the marketing and the awards and, all of that has to, that comes after, and you see how it's, what the appeal is. And, I'm beside myself that, that our work is being, embraced and acknowledged in the way that it is. But the making of this world has to come from, just devotion to the piece itself, and supporting, the cast and the director, and, and making that be the best that it can possibly be.
I'd love to ask, you're here now and you've done this amazing film. You've been nominated for an Oscar and a BAFTA. You've also won an Oscar and a BAFTA in the past. You're at this point where you're at the pinnacle of what anyone would hope for as a career. But how did that all begin? And where did your sort of, love of makeup and designing, where did that come from to start with?
Well, one thing you mentioned earlier was like, some people take so many hours to do a makeup. I very, very early on, I was very young, when I got the chance to work on The Singing Detective with Sir Michael Gambon and Dennis Potter being the writer. And it was so creative and so new to TV. It was absolutely breaking in its day, breaking all barriers that the BBC had. And the makeup on Michael used to take me sometimes, if it was a full body, 4.5 hours to get that bleeding, peeling off skin. And John Amell, who directed it, he broke barriers by allowing for the makeup. He shot all the close-ups first, and then as the day progressed, he did the mid shots, the wide shots, which is unheard of. Yeah. But he did it because Michael was so animated that the makeup couldn't stay in his face the whole day. So we reversed the whole process. So we got the close-ups first, and then John got the performances in the reverse of what is absolutely not the way round in our industry. But I started at the BBC and had that wonderful training that people don't get now, because of course it's free. And I feel for the new artists and talent coming up now, because not only does it cost a fortune for courses, but once you get into the industry, it's harder to get in as well, I believe. So it's very important that we take and carry new people with us everywhere and teach what we can, where we can. But that was my start. That was my love of old Hollywood came from my parents. I used to watch, and I used Grace Kelly as an influence for Ariana's beautiful ethereal look throughout, because Grace Kelly has a quality about her that I didn't want to, it wasn't based on her look. It was just that she was so graceful and radiant, and Ari has that, and so natural though. If she was never, it always came from within, I think is a way of describing it. And my basis in my history of my movie life came from the old Hollywood stuff. And I think maybe Rear Window was one of my favorite Hitchcocks, and I've always loved the style and the quality of his work. You know, gosh, that man never won an Oscar.
That's crazy. You've outdone him, so you know.
Well, he'd be cross.
Fair play. That is mad. Actually, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, I mean, so many of his films are iconic. I mean, how can one person have so many titles that you're just like, each one of them feels like someone's pinnacle in their career, but he's got several. Talking about some of the things that you've done, I mean, the versatility is insane. And a title I want to mention, which you'll probably be like, that's a random one, but I really wanted to mention it because it is one of my favorite British comedies, is Death at a Funeral. Film is brilliant. It's one of my dad's favorite films as well. But I mean, that film was just so surprising, and I just didn't see it coming. I absolutely loved it. But when you compare that to, I mean, you've worked on Captain Phillips, the Grand Budapest Hotel, Jason Bourne, like the versatility is crazy. And is that something you strive for? That you like to sort of turn different things?
Oh yes, very much so. And if you look behind every one of those films you mentioned, then you mention who's directing each one. I think in there lies my huge luck in life with Paul Greengrass, Wes Anderson, I mean, Frank Oz. I'm going to have the pleasure of working with somebody else I've wanted to work with all my life very soon that I'm not allowed to talk about, but I yeah, I know. And how lucky for me that even at this stage, I get that pleasure still. But I think everything you mentioned really is the director behind it that made every one of those projects so special. I mean, Tom Hanks and Captain Phillips, to me, it's one of the most wonderful things he's ever done. It was so emotional, I think, so real.
Heart-wrenching.
Yeah. Paul Greengrass is such a talent. I just wish he'd make more. Wes Anderson, how lucky am I to have had I started with Wes because of Bill Murray from I did a project called The Man Who Knew Too Little.
Yeah, I was going to say that it was that where was that the first project you did with Bill Murray, and then was it kind of like you're like his makeup artist essentially. You go and do pretty much every film that he does, you're on. So it was that relationship that built from that film from the beginning.
We did, yes. It started from that film, and I think it was a year. We loved the film, and a year later, Bill called. In America, it's hair and makeup is separate, and in England we tend to combine it more often than not. We do both. I do hair, makeup, and prosthetics design. So, I think, not belittling myself, but I think that was one of the things that Bill really liked was it combined the look and I don't know. I mean, I sound like I'm putting myself down, but I think it was one less person in his face.
It's very British of you to put yourself down.
But you know, he's a wonderful. I blessed the day I met him, and also that he took me to do Rushmore, because Wes opened up my life artistically in a way, and what he allowed me to be and what he brought to me as well as what I could bring to him. And because Wes cares about every single hair on somebody's head or face, it makes you strive to be more of a perfectionist every day, but to bring it without so much pomp around it that you don't take away their time. Is finding the nuances in it that don't take the act director's time away from he's what he needs.
Well, his films are just so you see a frame and you know it's him.
Yes.
And there's not many directors you can say that it's pretty unique. So that must be a lot of fun getting to sort of design that look and be able to make those characters come to life in a way. We're running out of time, so I just want to ask you one last thing, and that is you kind of skirted around it a little bit, but I'd like to ask you, do you have any advice for people trying to get into the hair and makeup department, just starting out, getting on set? Any advice you'd give to someone that's getting their foot in the door?
I one thing is I recognize how hard it is now, and the second thing I say to everyone is don't ever give up, because it's easy to give up when you're striving towards it, and when within the industry, I'm sure in America and here, it's harder and harder just to get that gap in the door. But I say don't give up. There will be that break somewhere, and you will make it. But when you do get in the door, think about the tiny things that make something perfect, not the big things that make something perfect, because the small things are really, to me, what makes the difference.
Something has changed within.
What an amazing project to get to work on and play. I mean, it must have been so much fun being able to sort of, create these looks, these amazing, the makeup on it's incredible. How did this job come about for you?
I had the pleasure of working with John True in my past. I did Now You See Me Too with him. So when Wicked came up, John and I Zoomed. I'm sure with many other people, I'm sure I wasn't an immediate choice or anything. But when we met again on Zoom, I don't know. I think John just got the vibe, and I was desperate to do the film. I'd seen Wicked the play so often, so I was very lucky, and I was chosen.
I see you going in as a fan of the show as well.
Oh, a huge fan of the show. I'd seen it 7 or 8 times when it first opened. My children, I had 2 daughters who were in love with it, so I used to take them regularly. And of course, I've always loved the Wizard of Oz film. That's just been from my childhood. So I had my heart was sold. I just needed John to know it.
It's crazy how long Wicked's been around, actually. I always still think of it as a fairly new musical, but it's been around. It must be almost 20 years, maybe? I don't know.
No, still right. Yeah, we celebrated its 20th year in London Theatre during Wicked, during the filming. So that's probably about 24 now, 25 years now.
Oh, God, it's even older than I thought. Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, it may be I don't know when it opened in America.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I have to still ask, it must be well, for me looking in, I'm like, if I was doing the makeup on this, my first question would be like, how am I going to convincingly make someone green? What was the process with figuring out, the best way to do that? And I'm sure you tried different options and everything else, but what was the sort of process with that?
It's funny, it was my first thought as well. How am I going to do it? Well, you're not wrong. It was I started, it was the biggest challenge, which is hard to believe when we had like 88 speaking parts and 3,500 crowd or more supporting artists. Still, to get that green right was paramount. And so it was where I started. And it was trying to, what we've known and all in the art film industry is it's easy to look face painted. It's very hard to look like it's coming from within, that it's not painted on. And it has been trialed in post on many other films. I know our visual effects, Pablo, is the best in the world. It doesn't always bring the same effect within those moments of change within lighting. So once I discovered the green, working on models with the right skin tone and everything, and it was a bespoke product, and it was discovering little elements that brought it together, like adding the breaking point was adding fluorescent yellow to the product that was the correct green. And that's why Cynthia's skin looks so alive in every light, because you'll see when you go back and look again, there's a tiny hint of yellowy gold coming from the underneath. And it's the way neon or fluorescent absorbs light that made the difference. and we'd never used it before in our product. So it was a real light bulb moment, I think it's called.
Yeah, wow. That's really, yeah, I'll have to go back and really sort of look at that this time.
We did add on, like, onto the surface to embed it. We did, like, one of the tricks of the trade that us in the industry is like adding freckles to look younger. And Cynthia has no eyebrows. We added tattoo transfer eyebrows, and then within it all and all the contouring, then Cynthia brings life to everything, brought her heart and soul to how she saw Elphaba. So it's a very organic development within the story arc that we're trying to tell.
Oh, wow, wow. How long was that process every day, coming on set and making that, it sounds like there's a lot of detail that goes into that. How long does that take?
Well, as you know from most of the stuff you've seen, it's the face, neck, and hands were her everyday part. And it started at about 2:15 and it got down to about 1:45. And then you had to include the end of the day, the cleaning off. So it was very important that not only did the green not transfer onto Ari's beautiful costumes or Ari kissing her face, it lasted a 12-hour day. It didn't come off with sweat or tears. There was lots of criteria, and it got on so quickly that you didn't ruin John Chu's filming day. So we did crack all of those requirements, I might say, and got it down to minimal time as we could for Cynthia. There were longer days when she had legs and other parts added.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah, because you do hear horror stories of some films where it's hours and hours and hours. So that sounds pretty quick. That sounds pretty. You got that down to a fine time.
Yeah.
But in terms of the whole, the look of the characters and not only the lead, but all the other. I mean, there's so many. I mean, obviously, I've talked to Paul about the costumes and talked to Nathan about the sets and all these things. All the things that bring together what this film looks like. How exciting was it when you did get that phone call to say that you were going to do this, and all the possibilities, and also you've still got the musical to draw from, but to be able to sort of put your own stamp on it, how exciting was that?
But I don't know that there are words to describe it really, but it was like I felt knowing John, and I hadn't worked with Nathan or Paul before, but once we all went in and had our meetings, seeing how open the creative line was, like we had nature, architecture, we had history to draw on from The Wizard of Oz, we had the theatre production, we had all those wonderful Bram illustrations. There was a feast there to research and to bring to the plate where needed, or wherever John might have asked for a nod towards something like Fiero's horse, he wanted to not copy as in mimic, but have a coloured horse as in The Wizard of Oz, or the Munchkins we had to redesign completely because they were rather fancy in The Wizard of Oz, and John wanted our world to be old Hollywood, timeless, and not laid in fantasy. We wanted to be laid into reality so the audience could immerse themselves in it and relate to it. So we didn't want to have like little punk rainbow hairdos. So I went for the texture, colour and earth colours within the hair, everybody being red, but of a version of, and tan skin and freckles from the weather because they're an agricultural people. And within that, the costumes and the sets were layered. So it set and was really believable, I think.
I noticed that one of your very first credits was Hook, which talk about, I mean, the set on that film is kind of legendary, that it was like the biggest set of the, starting out and being a small part of a film like that. I mean, that must have been a bit mad walking onto set and being like, wow, here with, Steven Spielberg and Robin Williams and all that lot.
I thought all films, that was how you made all films. My first were Hook and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh, yeah. I mean, another banger, to be fair.
Yeah, so I was like, I literally naively thought, it's like, this is fantastic. And, nothing really worked properly. Like the Hook ship had welded itself to the floor and wouldn't float. And the tank was leaking and everyone was running around trying to fix things. And it was utter chaos, but it was like, oh, I really like it here. Yeah. The ambition is colossal. And it was on the old MGM stages. I still remember that very first day on of work, walking down the old MGM lots and looking at the history of the place and the chaos and realizing, yeah, this is I finally found my place.
This is where I belong.
Actually, if you look at that sort of arc, I've come back to Book and Dracula. Wonka.
Yes.
They kind of, they're sort of bookending. I've come all the way back around. I've given up the beaches of Dunkirk.
Yeah, I was gonna say Christopher Nolan movie, and you've done so many films I believe 8 films with him.
Yeah.
So to come back round to something a bit more like Hook, it's a fun family adventure musical, which I guess you kind of eased yourself away from that by doing Wonka. That was kind of like almost like a little tease towards it, and then
it was a warm-up on. I mean, it was a big warm-up. We did a lot of work. But I actually did The Greatest Showman, which was the start of...
Of course, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and so, and it was at the end of Dunkirk, Michael Gracie rang me, who I'd met a few times. He said, I'm going to do The Greatest Showman, and it's like, I'm in. I could do with need some relief from...
Yeah. I saw The Dark Knight Rises, and I thought, you know what? He'd be perfect for that. I mean, walking onto set and doing that for the first time, the whole going from a real kind of, dark phrase, like you had several films as we said there, Public Enemies was another one, to then go to a musical. What is the gear shift like with something like that?
Well, the gear shift is, I guess you have to be ready to try something new, and secondly, you have to be open to more color and dance and rhythm, and I mean those dancers are mesmerizing, and the music, the composers, it's just a whole nother world of quite brilliant people. So I think if you allow yourself to fall in, I used to sit all day on The Great Showman and watch those dancers go time and time again. It was just, I couldn't have seen enough of it. And I think that sort of, and in terms of fantasy, I hadn't really tackled that. I only tackled it in a very, very junior position on Hook and Bram Stoker's Dracula. And it was like, I really want to take everything I know now about practical filmmaking and see if I can apply it to fantasy and balance CG. So it was good to take all those Nolan films and say, can we apply this to, really, it's ever since, when I was a kid, you just want to fall into the screen in the cinema. And that's all I wanted. You wanted your brain to forget about the world and you're part of that. And that's, and I always felt that I got that at the Odeon Leicester Square. and so that was always the challenge. So really it's been very exciting, I have to say, these last few years. So
I'm excited to see what you do next, because I feel like you've done a bit of everything, but there's probably something else out there that is a complete gear change again, something else. So I look forward to seeing what's next. But I'd love to ask as well, do you have advice for, people going into, those, young art designers, people that are just sort of starting out and maybe they're on their Hook job right now and they're kind of figuring out where they belong and meeting their people. What would your advice be to them?
Well, be optimistic in terms of allowing yourself to fall into it. Be useful, learn everything you can, learn everything, because film is definitely, film art departments is if you can do a bit of everything, you pick up a paintbrush, paint a backing, learn to paint a backing, learn to model, learn about miniatures, just learn. There's so many techniques, and you just need to be the useful person. And with that is attitude and optimism. It's even if you can't do it, do it.
Yeah, no, just keep going. Yeah. I think it's the optimism of keeping going as well. And because we talk to so many people from different sections of the film industry on this podcast, and it's you just got to keep pushing, haven't you, until you find that success, until you find your place. As you said, you were like, hang on a minute, I'm with my people now.
Also, your arts department wise, it's thinking or creating in 3 dimensions in your head. Like concentrate on thought, about design solutions, or what I mean by solutions is like not the obvious, because if you can find something interesting, and most of the time because it's unfamiliar to people, they don't know if they like it. So you just have to keep pushing ideas forward. And you need to find, you just mustn't be satisfied. You got to keep going.
As a production designer, to come on and create this world, I mean, that must be a bit of a dream come true doing something like this.
Yeah, it was, but it was sort of more than that for me, because it was a kind of it was a new door to open. Like I hadn't really, like I've done a lot of large scale films, but I hadn't really gone into sort of fantasy in this way. So to get the opportunity to do it with Oz, I can't think of anything better.
I mean, yeah, it's a great, and the way it looks, and I just talked to the costume designer Paul, and all the elements come together. The costume, the production design, the way it's shot, everything is, and it is the elite. I mean, everyone that worked on this film is at the top of their game, including yourself. I mean, coming on board of this and getting that phone call, as you say, it's slightly different to what you've done in the past. But that, I mean, a new challenge, that must have been exciting to be like, okay, this is something new.
Yeah, I definitely, I think as you sort of get older as a film designer, you're always looking to do something new and challenging. You really need to, and probably even if you're young, you need to continually, see how far you can stretch your ideas and design themes. So yeah, coming onto this was, I guess, there was a slight sort of innocence when I first sort of, I immediately, it's wicked. And then, the realization that we actually have to, go alongside the Wizard of Oz and, tell that other side of the story and recreate Oz really in a new way that audiences would accept and fall into and focus on story rather than place. In a weird way, a designer's job is to make you feel so comfortable that you just focus on the narrative, and if we jump you out of it, it can be a problem. But you also have to delight. I mean, John Chu is just brilliant. He came from this place of whimsical delight, and he wants, the idea that everyone, would love Oz, and and then the Emerald City would be somewhere that everyone wanted to go, and you had to push that into that film. And Shiz had to be this marvelous institution, this ancient institution that wasn't, your fearful first day at some, Gothic university. It was like the joyous occasion of arrival. So, it was about sort of, finding those themes. There's so many themes in The Wizard of Oz and in Wicked that it was immense. I mean, it was, as I was saying, it was a sort of, I wouldn't say it's naive, but the realization was, it was like, oh, I've got to do the Emerald City.
Yeah.
And I have to go into it, and I have to get you all there. And there's, with a lot of these sort of older titles, there's lots of hazards in the way that have been done before. When you're doing Munchkin Land, you can fall into the Hobbits, you can fall into Swiss villages, you can fall, so you have to pass everything. So you, the audience, don't say, hey, that looks like I'm in Middle Earth.
No, but it's fine. That balance must be so difficult, especially as you mentioned there. Everyone knows the Wizard of Oz, the Yellow Brick Road, Emerald City. So to make that new and exciting, but also at the same time not go so far that people are like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I just thought you struck such a beautiful in between there, and it felt familiar but also new. It must be so hard to sort of, when you start this job, that task must feel huge.
Yeah, because you have to, in terms of large scale films, even on small scale films, we don't have a ton of time, and we have to get through all the no's to get to the yeses. And so we have to push hard to begin with. The art department has to really plow into it to get rid of all the ideas that you will not like as you move forward. So, that challenge is also the connection, because we do everything practically, or I'm known for building practically and trying to build as much as possible. I mean, obviously there's tons of the effects from Pablo and his great team, but I try and give him enough physical information, and Alice will photograph it, and the effects will then have photographic textures and information on real elements, that his job is made just a little bit easier in terms of environments, even though he has to do flying monkeys. Let's focus his team on really some of the larger challenges, which aren't environments. So he still has to do them beautifully. So yeah, I always try and build everything, and in doing so, it also focuses me down to the sort of touchable reality of texture, and I think audiences feel it.
100%. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about this film. Was when I heard that it was gonna be a movie, you kind of think, okay, this is gonna be a lot of CGI before you see anything. But then watching the film, I was like, you can tell a lot of these sets are real and they're tangible, and there's just something different than having a green screen, blue screen. You can feel the space and you feel the size of it, which I really appreciate. I much prefer that to some Marvel movies where it's just like it's just all CGI. But no, it felt tangible, and even though I know, as you say, there's flying monkeys, there's all kinds of things, and there's obviously VFX, but it was such a great balance that was met.
It's a weave. Yeah, it's a weave. I mean, I also think that we as production designers, we're not called art directors, we're called production designers, you have to sort of figure out, like, to tell the story of the Munchkins, you have to understand what they do. Are they farmers? Do they farm color? Do they, do they then farm tulip, because they're all the colors of the rainbow? There's themes in there. And then does that allow you, when you build the house, and in physically build it, when you build the village, and when you physically build that village, you realize the color, you can stain the walls, because each house deals with a different colored tulip. So you build yourself a visual language that you, by building something physically, you can investigate during the sort of sculpt or build of the set. So it's fluid. I think, even down to shiz is like, how do you get to shiz? What are the questions here? You can't go by horse and cart because you're stepping on free animals. So you can't go by, there's no cars. You can't go by train. That's the Wizards technology. The air balloons, you can't go, you know what I mean? So what are you left with? And it's like, you're left with rivers and waters. So, you find the language of landscape, and, where do we need the water? We need to film boats arriving to Shiz. So we need a Seven Sisters down in the South Coast. We need some of those rivers, and we need to go down there and film the second unit. And then what are the cliffs down there? They're white, and that informs you of the rock inside Shiz, which is much more joyous than the dark granite. You know what I mean? There's all these sort of theories and languages that you have to sort of, you don't even have to investigate them, but it's really good fun. Like, plotting. And I feel like you feel that in the film. You feel there's a reason, because when you come out of the Wizard and I, you're on white cliffs, and that makes sense because she's running out of Shiz, and then the impassable desert is there, but it's white because it's chalk cliffs, and it feels like the sea because it's light and it's not, it's not yellow. So, I feel like there's a language that you discover by through design, and that's really good fun.
Yeah, is it mad that this is your job? Like, you're living the dream, man. If you describe that to me now, I'm like, I'm just jealous because this was like such good fun. Like, is it mad to think, you know, where you started from and now you're here?
Yeah, it's mad. I mean, like, I got, you know, in 22 or 23, I got off a plane in LA to, you know, to visit some friends and ended up here. It's very odd. It's a very odd journey. And, you know, even though I studied art school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I just by pure luck, I fell into a business that I belong to. And the people are the same as me.
You're like, hang on a minute. This makes sense now. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're all mad.
Yeah. This is your 9 to 5. You've got to be a little bit mad, haven't you? And this is where you are now, and you're doing extremely well, and it's very exciting. I'd love to ask how this began, how much kind of, you know, drama school and things like that, how much that influenced you and shaped you in the beginning.
Definitely. I mean, I'm mainly an actress because, like pretty much every actor out there, I love attention. I'm kidding. But when I was younger, I always really loved musicals and like going to see like even local theatre in where I'm from in Wakefield. And then it kind of progressed to doing like Amdram and then school theatre and then, you know, summer camps where you do a musical for the summer, that kind of thing. And then it was only really after going to college for performing arts and then to drama school that I was like, oh, that could actually be me. I could do that. So I went from being like this little nerdy, like musical theatre geek and everything and loving theatre and playing pretend and, you know, writing my own kind of like, I'm going to write a play and I'm 12 and it's going to be amazing. But then like...
Was it amazing?
Listen, I'm going to dig it out. You watch. It's got to get...
Dig it out. Get it. Get it.
It's so stupid. But yeah, so it's always been, you know, creativity has always been something that I've been really interested in. And I've been really lucky, like getting into the industry full stop is damn near impossible. So for me to have had a relatively kind of short career so far, I had my first professional job in 2015. So it's been nearly 10 years into the industry. And it's something that I'm really grateful for and extremely lucky with. And even more lucky that I get to be an actress and that's my job. And I get to do things like Wicked, something that I've loved since being a kid, or doing things like How to Train Your Dragon, something else that I've loved, you know, for as long as it's been around. And being able to do jobs where there's so much passion behind it and it's a love of what I'm doing and something that, you know, if I wasn't in it, I'd be watching it anyway.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really nice to hear, you know, that the way you put that, because a lot of people, I'm an actor myself, I've been doing it many years, but there's so many actors that come and go and they're like, I've been doing it 6 years, like I haven't had that break yet. And the way you described that, you know, you've been doing it a relatively short time, but it's still nearly a decade. And the fact that you've been doing it for as long as you have, and, you know, looking at your credits, you've done some amazing things, but it's like that stepping stones, isn't it? It's the whole way.
Yeah.
So I just love that, you know, you're like, oh, I'm at the beginning of my career. This is like, you haven't been doing it long. You've done so well to get where you are, you know, it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a firm believer in, I don't think the big break exists. You know, my first ever job was a main part in a West End show, directed and written by Martin McDonough, and I thought, this is going to be my big break. I'm going to be a star after this. I'm going to be fighting off the jobs. And then after that, it was just a series of like, come in, do one line for like doctors, come in, do one line for some comedy thing, no named characters, nothing. And even just before I did Wicked, bearing in mind, I've been on the West End, I've been filming for years at this point, I'd done TV series, comedy shows, everything. Just before I got Wicked, I was doing like 3 lines of an unnamed character in a show that I'd never heard of before. So I would say that like the big break is what everyone's looking for. But for me, it's always been a case of like, this is a job that I love. I don't care what it is, what show it is, what kind of part it is. There's no such thing as small parts. If a job gets offered to me, I'm going to take it and I'm going to use that as a platform to get to the next place and to get to where I want to be. And then bigger things do come, like Wicked, like How to Train Your Dragon, and then hopefully more things. So it's all about being able to kind of get over ego a little bit and be like, yeah, I'm not playing Elphaba in Wicked, but I'm going to make Shen stand out and make her fan favorite so that I can use that as something else that gets me to hopefully one day be the lead of a film. Although I will always pick characters like Shen. The too much.
You have more fun with those sort of characters, for sure.
Like, they're just baddies are nice, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just juice.
It's something that has very much kind of taken over everybody's life at the minute in terms of like talking about it and press and everything. But it's a film I'd be talking about regardless of being in it. So it kind of works out in the end.
I mean, it's lovely that, the film's come out. It's been out a while. It's still in cinemas. And now you're still talking about it. And it's because obviously it's been, so many awards and everything else have been thrown at it. So it's always a good sign when people want you to keep talking about a project after its release. But I'm intrigued to ask, how did how did you get involved with this? I know that you were a big fan of the show before you were cast in the film.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was the first show I ever saw at the West End, first time in London and everything. And since then I've seen it about 8 or 9 times now. And it's one theatre show that will never get boring. And I've kind of done the same thing with the film now. So even though I've seen it like 7 times as part of the press tour, I went to go see it last week with my friend and her kids. And again, it never gets boring. I'll never get bored of talking about it either.
I love that there's also, because it's, with stage play, you've got that, but with this, there's 2 parts. So, there's more to look forward to. And because I had never seen the show. So watching the film, I was like, I didn't see the twists and turns. I didn't see there's bits that come up and you're like, oh, I didn't know that was going to be a thing. And really,
see part 2.
yeah, exactly. And I'm glad, and I do want to see the show, but I'm going to wait until I see the second film, I think, because I quite enjoyed having the surprise of, where it went, and, some of the characters you thought were going to be friends, weren't, and everything else, without giving it away for anyone that hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, you shouldn't be watching this episode, just to put out there for anyone that is listening to this now. Stop and go watch the film. But in terms of, your character and being a part of this, what was the build up like and the prep for this?
Oh, you know what? Anytime I get to play a really bitchy kind of mean girl character or a bully or, a baddie, it's always a really fun time. Because you can kind of, a character like Shen, because she's so mean, you can really make her someone that the audience can laugh at. So I really loved finding the kind of comedy with Shen, and obviously working with Bowen. He's like a comedic genius. So that ended up being another amazing thing about it, because he was so good to be on set with, and kind of we'd bounce ideas off each other or improv and just see what happened to it. But in terms of my prep for Shen, so when I first auditioned, we were given really short scene, and I thought I'm auditioning for Wicked. I don't care what the part is. If they want me to run and get coffee for people or sit and take notes, that can be my job. I just have to be in the film. So getting to audition for Shen was really incredible. And then when I got cast, and doing the whole rehearsal process with John Chu, it kind of became this really massive thing where I was like, oh my gosh, we can have so much fun with this, because being given a lot of kind of creative input and being able to bring our ideas to set and rehearsals. So I watched a lot of very like American stereotypical 2000s film. So obviously like Mean Girls.
I was going to say Mean Girls is a good one. Yeah.
And like, what was the other one with Rose McGowan in it? Is it called Candy? Or like Jawbreaker or something? It's where she gets the jawbreaker in her throat. That one.
I know what you mean. I can't.
Yeah.
It's cool. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. That's a great excuse to get to watch kind of like these like as you say late 90s, early 2000s like gets.
And I watched a lot of. There was quite a few like nowadays kind of influences that I brought in because I was there's a couple of YouTubers that I was like, oh, they've got really funny mannerisms and like they're very like LA and they speak kind of like their mouth doesn't move and they do a lot of their commands. So I really like that. And then like these little T-Rex arms decided to come out of nowhere because I remember for the auditions I was like, I'm gonna go in and have fun with it. Like John's letting me improvise, so I'm gonna go in dressed bitchy. So I'd always wear these like really like billowy kind of like pretty tops, and I'd always like get either acrylics on or like false nails, and they were always really long. So I found myself kind of just always fidgeting with my hands, and that really quickly became a thing for Shen Shen. That she's always just like, "Oh my god, I love my nails." So yeah, getting to play that kind of really silly, mean character is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love how you found little elements like that. As you say, the hands, everything else, you found it along the way, and it was kind of just bringing it all together. The list of the movies you've done, I mean, like Lock, Stock, Shaun of the Dead, Layer Cake, Bridget Jones, it's Prometheus. Like there's so much variety. You've done a Bond film, No Time to Die. But how did it all begin for you?
I was always into music as a kid. And when I started as a runner in the commercials industry, I just gravitated towards the sound department. I was making a commercial and as an assistant, and there was another young assistant there, and I kind of recognized him from London, from growing up in West London, same parties, same nightclubs, and we nodded at each other. We kind of, we connected, had a conversation with him, and he said to me, "Look, I'm desperate to be a director. I don't want to be assisting on commercials. I've written this short film. I've heard that you'd like to be a sound mixer. Would you like to come and sound mix my short film?" That assistant was called Guy Ritchie. The short film was called The Hard Case. And The Hard Case was a 10-minute sizzler that we made in 1995, which became Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels 2 years later when he wrote the long version, which was my first movie.
Wow, that's insane. Wow, it's a real sliding doors moment, man. I love that. Brilliant. The one thing I really noticed straight away, because I've been tinkering and trying to get my sound right with my when I watch films with my TV and everything else, and I've had it all set up perfectly. And then the minute I put Wicked on, I felt that rumble and there was like a deep bass, and I was like, "Ooh, okay." And the sound in this film is just. It's amazing. It really, I'm with the surround sound as well. Everything sort of, comes around you. Getting a job like this, and I mean, you've done so many fantastic projects along the way, but this must have been pretty fun getting to do something like this.
It's kind of like every project that I've had leading up to this has been a stepping stone towards this project, because this was the biggest, most challenging job I've ever had. Wow. And one of the reasons it was incredibly challenging is because live vocals on sets that big, with that many cameras, with hundreds of dancers doing choreography, it's not easy. But what we wanted to do was to really, really support these actors' emotional performances. When you use a pre-recorded lip sync track, it's obvious to the audience. And there is something, although look, there's some great musicals out there that have had lip sync, but we kind of go, "Oh, there's the lip sync," and we just accept it. And I'm not sure, although it's a beautiful spectacle of filmmaking, I'm not sure we believe the emotions. And what I think's different about Wicked is we absolutely buy those emotions because they're real. That's not a pre-record in a recording studio. You know, when Cynthia or Ari kind of in the middle of a song take a moment and just have a breath and, you know, you can feel that their emotions are real. And then when you mesh that together with, as you just said, the sound design, the sound effects, the beautiful score, it just creates something that I think audiences have connected with. I mean, I'm obviously incredibly proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the things I did notice straight away, that it, you know, you believe that everyone's actually singing.
Yeah.
Because as you said, that can really take you out of something like this. Was it a similar process when you did Mamma Mia? Did you do a similar thing with that?
On Mamma Mia, we were 100% lip sync with pre-recorded tracks until we were, because that was the old school way of making musicals. But there was one particular moment, it was one verse in Mamma Mia where Meryl Streep is climbing onto a roof. And she said, I don't feel right doing this because when we were pre-recording it in the recording studio, I had no idea what I'd be doing. And there's no effort in my voice. It doesn't sound like I'm climbing as I'm singing. Please, can we try and do it live? And that was the first moment on a film where I went completely live. And it worked really well. And we ended up doing another track on Mamma Mia live. And so there was that one verse and another track that we did live. And that kind of gave me the confidence to say, this works. But also watching those two scenes in the movie theater as an audience member, I kind of went, there's something here that works. There's something authentic that I believe more than lip syncing. And that was, as I say, a stepping stone towards being able to say to John Chu, yes, we can go 100% live.
Wow, yeah, I mean, that's because I haven't seen Mamma Mia for a long time, but I'd like to go back and revisit now and see if I can sort of pinpoint the moments. But I mean, with this, and that shows you there as well that you have to cast a talented group of actors that can actually, you know, deliver the singing. And that you can see with this cast, they're all very experienced with that, and they're all fantastic. I mean, it must be great to be on set and to you know, hear all these live, you know, it's like a performance, isn't it, over and over again each take. What was the experience of actually like being on set for this?
Well, what's crazy about it is I've obviously heard Ariana sing on her own. I'd heard Cynthia sing on her own, and I knew that they both had beautiful voices. What was extraordinary was when they started singing together live on the set and harmonizing. And we were just like, the whole crew was just like, oh my God. Something about their voices when they blend just meshes, and it creates like this super voice. And they, not only do the frequencies of their voices just complement each other hugely, but because they're such great singers, they actually know how to move their voices together in a way where when one goes a little bit louder, the other one backs off, and they give each other space to be able to perform. And they're almost doing, my job was easy, they're almost doing their own sound mixing with their own vocal volumes as they're singing. It's incredible. But something else I can tell you is we don't have any music coming out of speakers on the set when we're shooting, because I have to get clean vocals that we can then add the orchestration to later. Now, the actors are wearing IEMs like I'm wearing now, which we paint out in visual effects in post-production so that they can hear the music, but the microphones that I'm recording them singing with doesn't hear the music. So I get their vocal clean. So if you like, we had 250 members of our film crew who were getting an unplugged performance every day. They were getting Cynthia and Ari and Jonathan and Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Yeoh all singing live, completely a cappella with no musical accompaniment. But each person on the crew had their own set of headphones because they needed to be able to hear the music, sometimes for cueing lights or swinging a crane or pushing a dolly. And so at any point they could put their headphones on and hear what you hear in the cinema, which is the beautiful blend of vocal and music. But then they take their headphones off and they'd have this like visceral, raw, unplugged performance. So it was something pretty special.
Wow, yeah, it's something that I can't imagine you get bored of. going on set and getting to have that every day. That's pretty amazing. I mean, you touched on Mamma Mia there, and you mentioned that, you know, you experimented with a couple of those scenes, doing it the same way that you did with this film. And obviously that was was that the first time you kind of experimented with that? Because you obviously went on to do Les Mis, which you won a BAFTA and Oscar for. And that I remember there was a lot of talk at the time that was the first time that the whole film was going to be done the way you've done Wicked now, which is obviously, you know, the modern way of doing it, as you said before. I can't remember what I was asking there, but essentially was that, I mean, Les Mis was the first time you'd done that the whole way through a production.
Yeah. I come from music videos and commercials, and I'd done little bits and pieces of live singing in the early days of my career. And that gave me the skills to be able to say to Meryl Streep, yep, we can do this. Let's do it, and understand how to technically support that creative request. It was successful. We then moved on to Les Mis a few years later, and Tom Hooper said to me, look, we have to go live because there's no dialogue in this film. If we lip sync, we're going to be asking our cast to lip sync for 2 hours. And that is a real big ask for a cinema audience to watch a whole film of lip syncing. Because, of course, in a normal musical, you have sections of dialogue and then you go into singing. So you're only asking the audience to believe the lip syncing for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you're back into dialogue. Now, Les Mis was obviously different because the whole thing is sung from start to finish. And that was the driving force between Tom wanting to go live. On Wicked, it was slightly different. With Wicked, we obviously went back to having dialogue, but what we didn't want to do, firstly, was have those transitions between dialogue on the set and then a pre-recorded vocal, because I'm sure you know as an audience member that it's very obvious when you go from the dialogue on the set into a pre-recorded studio vocal, there's a difference in the sound, and you notice it. And so what John Chu wanted to do, and what I was there to support him with, was making sure that there was no transition because we weren't going into a pre-record. And what that enabled Cynthia and Ari to do, and Ari's a great example of this. If we think about the song Popular, she riffs with it. And what I mean by that is she sings, and then she says a line of dialogue, and then she starts singing again, and then she says a word of dialogue. Now that was completely spontaneous. She decided to do that on the day. That was her completely riffing with the music track in her IEM and deciding that she was going to say a line of dialogue and then go back into singing. Now, had we have been doing a pre-record and she had been lip syncing, it would have taken that away completely. So that performance wouldn't have been possible. And so what John Chu has so deftly shown everyone is that if you go live, you're giving power back to your actors. You're letting their emotions and their instinct drive the performance rather than them being dictated to by a backing track which is saying sing now. The other thing that we did a lot on Wicked was we didn't lock them to a pre-recorded backing track even. We had a pianist playing an electric keyboard into their IEM, and the pianist was asked by the actors, don't ever lead us. Let us lead and just accompany us. And that again gave the actors the ability to set their own pace. For instance, with Cynthia on I'm Not That Girl, she sung that almost completely free of backing track, just with a very, very sparse keyboard in her ear. And that enabled her to start singing when she wanted to take a break in between lines, to take a break in between verses, to almost take a moment and have a breath where she wanted to. And that again creates this visceral reality which we believe as audience members. So again, that was where John Chu was really, really smart. And because he had Ari and Cynthia, who are, you know, absolutely fantastic recording artists, as well as being fantastic actors, they understood exactly how this empowered them and exactly how they could use this creatively.
Wow, that's insane, and just shows you, as you say, they have to be amazing singers and performers to be able to pull that off. It sounds like a lot of plates spinning to be able to kind of get your head around that. That's wicked, man. That is a perfect way to end, and really appreciate it, and all the best, man. I got my fingers crossed for you.
Thank you so much. It was so good to talk to you.
Thank you. And could I say thank you to having had the most amazing team in the world, because nothing I do is good without them. And thank you very much. It was very nice to talk with you.
Yeah, no worries. Nice to meet you, dude.
No, of course, it's lovely speaking with you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Real pleasure
Thank
to
you.
meet you both, and I'll be emailing you soon.
Yes, I hope you do.
Well, I'm glad to see you're both on a high right now, and congratulations, guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Nice
Nathan.
to see you.
This has been really,
Oh, thank you.
really inspiring.
Oh,
really inspiring.
Thank you, man.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So much.
Okay.
Good luck with the film.
All right, thank you. Oh, thank you.
I think it'll do all right. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to support us, get early access and exclusive content, all ad-free, click and join the Life in Film YouTube channel and become a member now. Thank you to our guests, and thank you to the team at Organic Publicity. As always, thank you to our sponsors, movieposters.com and BetterHelp.